Welcome to Zoom Bullshit. What is this thing? We're here because presentations are a lifestyle. In most of the corporate world, they exist because they're fun. This is Slide Hell, a personal collection cultivated for the worst slides of the world, many of which are designed poorly, but mostly they're just jargony. My slides, I made them intentionally terrible, or I made them unintentionally terrible, and you can't tell. Better for me. Here's how to watch. First of all, turn off and silence your phones. We can't tell this, but we want you to feel like maybe it's live comedy because it is. We're here. We're performing for you. And so, at least if you're going to disrespect this, post it on Insta. Ask questions via Twitch chat. That's super important because we're going to answer those questions. It's fun and it's a good way for us to interact and prove that this isn't all pre-recorded, because that wouldn't be any fun. The weirder questions you ask, the better an answer you get. So get goddamn weird. So sometimes we're faced with this question of, is this art? Does Zoom comedy count? And I keep up on current news. The New York Times is way behind us right here on Zoom Bullshit. In fact, they ran an article 2 days ago by somebody about Bill Irwin wants to find out if comedy on Zoom is a real thing. Oh Christ, who is that? That must be Bill Irwin. Okay, so with a face like that, maybe comedy online is a thing. Yeah, all right. So what is Zoom Bullshit? It is a competition, though it is a real competition because you vote on the winners. Each contestant gets 5 minutes to present 7 slides. It'll be super fun. You'll vote on it at the end. Our presenters tonight, in the first half, we're going to have Jess, then Noah, then Chris, then we'll have an intermission. The intermission will be super fun. You can get up and pee, but you'll miss the exciting part where we answer your questions. Then in the second half, we'll have Amanda and Blake, and then you guys will get to vote, which is great because it's your civic duty and you should know how to do that because it's good for the world. And then the winners, the 2 top places, will co-present the final slides to take you on home and have a lovely, lovely night. So where did all these slides come from? Great question. I made a pact with a Lovecraftian old one to get some of them, and the rest came from you guys by emailing into slides@zoombullshit.com. That's super important because without your slides, we can't keep these shows going. And we graciously thank you for your contributions to comedy and science. Okay, so enough gab from me. Without further ado, don't forget to ask questions. We're gonna get Jess right up here on stage and she'll be presenting that first slide deck.
Hello. So, good evening, everyone. I'm here to give you a quick overview today of grammaticalization. That's right, that's the word. Read it and weep. Here we go. Let's take it. Grammaticalization. I like to do this little intro a little dramatically. Let's start off with what it is. Boom, hit me. That's right. Grammaticalization is where a lexical unit or structure might assume a grammatical function, right? Or where a grammatical unit assumes a more grammatical function. I love structures. That's why I'm here. That's why you're here taking my master class in English. Next slide. Yes, so in this bullet, I just want to tell you that you should read the slides carefully because this means that some functional types may be characterized as having a more grammatical function than the others. So you saw the function in the last bullet. This function is even more intense, and now hit me with the next one. Yes, we have a hierarchy. Okay, so I'm your instructor, I'm the boss. Just like grammatical function, we operate in a hierarchy, from more to less grammarly. Okay, next bullet. Inflectional affixes. Did you hear my inflection? Yeah, that's right. Next bullet. I love bullets. Derivational, derivativational. That's the correct pronunciation of that. Affixes. Yeah, and next one. That's right, clitics. Do you know what a clitic is? Yeah. That's so immature that you're laughing during this presentation, but I understand. Let's see the next bullet. Functional categories and pronominal elements. That's actually why we're really here today. We're going to dive into this in the next slide. Next, please. Lexical categories. So where am I going with all of this? I've showed you here just a lot of language. I'm trying to overwhelm you. I'm trying to show you that I have power over you. And you know why I'm doing that? Because language has power over us all. That's really the take-home message I want you to take with you today. Next one, please. Now, part 2. In other words, grammaticalization involves a reanalysis of a lexical item, and that's going to cause an increase in grammatical function. Let's see the next one. Some examples. I'm just going to show you here on paper. This is an increase. Can everyone see this? Okay, so you're going to see here, we're going to be moving from a lexical category to a functional category. Next bullet. That's right. So for example, down here, you've got the Old French noun pas, which means step, into a negative particle. So that may seem a bit confusing because we're going up, right? As I mentioned, in the increase in function to the negative particle to accompany ne. Right. Okay, next bullet. So you may be wondering why we mentioned this pronoun to clitic. What kind of functional categories do we have there? So let's bring out the next 4 bullets, please. Just going to give you a few. Exactly. So when you integrate, this is great because you just took my lecture previously on advanced calculus. So when you integrate the area underneath this curve here, right? This explains actually how we evolved the Old Norse pronoun sick into the enclitic, which came to mark the voice. Okay, so I don't think I really need to go into details. You should have seen this in the assigned reading. But if you're ever confused, just integrate underneath that curve and it's all clear. Next, please. Okay, so as I mentioned, we're doing a lot of curves. We're connecting English to math. It's really all of a process. And that's why grammaticalization is commonly defined by functionalists. So functionalists write functions, right? So again, we're back to the math, connecting math to grammar. And how do we do that? Well, it's a process whereby these items come to serve as grammatical functions. So this isn't really new. I put the reference here because we're supposed to cite stuff in our slides, but everybody knows this, right? So whoever these people are, Hoppert and Traugott, some Germans getting in and trying to get some credit for this. I mean, this is just something we've all known. So you can think about that the functional accounts, so these functional accounts claim that process implies a single direction, but we should all be thinking in a cycle, right? So everybody knows cycles are important. Here's a cycle, right? You've all seen this before. Exactly. And you always want to think about grammaticalization as a shift from a less grammatical unit to a more grammatical unit. But why not from a more grammatical unit then back to a less grammatical unit? I mean, keep the cycle going, right? And so they say here it's irreversible. Again, doesn't negate my theory of a cycle, right? A cycle doesn't have to be reversible. It just, so Hopper and Traugott, suck that. And then Javon produced a model that attempts to characterize the unidirectional steps in grammaticalization. And let's see that last bullet, please. Exactly. So discourse, syntax, morphology, morphophenonomics. But you know what? You can go right back from that morphophenonomics. You can reduce that down to discourse. That's what I've been saying the whole time. All right, next slide. Oh, right. And exactly, this is the step in that process. See, the arrow's already going in the other direction. So what did they mean here, Hopper and Traugott, about unidirectional here? Okay, so let's get into principle-driven phenomenon. Why don't you just show me these 3 bullets right away? Because basically, we've been talking about that the whole time, right? That, I mean, everybody needs to be governed by something, right? So that's the grammaticalization, we don't get out of that. We're governed by strict laws, just like we're being forced to stay at home now. These particles in the process are forced to fall in line. Next slide. All right.
God.
Here I put together just the most important points. You can look at it at home. No, you are doing the right thing. Next slide. This is all well known. So there's a lot of problems, right, in the world in general. Here's some that have to do with the slides that I was showing you. And because this is my last slide, I just want you to think about the world in the context of grammaticalization, how all of this stuff seems really stupid and trivial. You know what? It is. But this really gives us the real lessons of life. Anytime you're stuck, keep going, turn things into a cycle, integrate under the curve, draw a freaking circle with some arrows, and people will take you seriously, okay? So thanks for your time. This is Professor McGonagall signing off.
Yes, thank you so much. I am left utterly without comma. If we could get Noah out here. He's up next. Chris, you're on deck. Noah. Hey, there we are.
Yeah, but sorry, I don't want to just disappoint anybody, but Noah couldn't make it, and he hired a box. So I'll be here as a box.
Box, take it away.
Okay, great. Well, Noah did leave me with his slide deck, so I had a chance to look through this. We're going to be talking a whole lot about black hole physics, not the kind you're thinking of, and tidal disruption of stars, also not the tidal disruption of stars you're thinking of. And this is largely the thought process as dictated by Linda Strube, who is German. Advance, please. Okay. All right. Here we go. Now, you're all probably thinking about black holes as that large thing in the sky. Maybe not large. We don't know actually how big it is. That's not exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about black holes that you might find in, let's say, a box. You look into a box and you see those black holes, and you reach in there and you find something that you might find likable, or maybe you're surprised by something that you don't like, and it's always a surprise here, and that must happen if a nucleus of any stellar system with a not too massive BH means box hell, and that's the worst. That is the worst version of a box surprise you might get. And again, we start by explaining massive box hells as our starting point, and then we go from there. Advance, please. All right, so tidal disruption of stars, that is just an general overview of how a black hole might find itself in a box. We can do these in several different ways. We can study cosmography. We can study stellar dynamics, and stellar, you might be thinking, oh, well, that's like the study of the skies. The stellar here is just really cool, and understanding massive black hole growth. Which is my favorite part. Okay, so let me just talk about the smaller MBHs. So smaller, massive black box hells. That can be described by this fun little equation here. So if a flower galaxy has a non-direct approach towards 10 to the negative 5 yards to the negative 1 power, then mo flower galaxy, mo trouble. So I don't want to get too far into the weeds here, but Super Eddington, his name is actually Super Eddington. His parents named him that. He's got an accretion which is a stronger version of secretion. And if you get a Super Eddington's accretion in your box, you're edging towards an MBH, which is a massive box hell. Okay, next slide. Okay, the process of disruption. If we're talking about disruptions, we're talking about reaching into a black hole which is in a box, and it's a negative surprise. That's a MBH, a massive bad box hell. Sorry, like I said, I just started researching this when Noah left. So disruption here. These are you can see here. We've got this this yellow dot here. That is what a surprise could be if it's good, right? But we see we're talking about we're talking about disruptions, and so they're edging towards something called a black hole, and it's getting pulled by something called potential well. Okay, potential well is exactly what you're thinking of, which is that thing in the backyard that has water in it. And sometimes if a box has water in it, it'll turn soggy and gross. And so that's how we use it to describe something bad, like a bad surprise. All right. I don't want to confuse you, but sometimes that yellow thing turns a little bit orange, and that's when it starts to go sour. And there we go. Advance, please. All right. And then if it turns robin eggs blue, that means that a bird has come along and laid an egg in your box. So move along. Don't have much time here, so if you can move along. Okay, so this is bound material. Bound material is just jargon, box jargon for someone who quickly farts into a box. And you'll see that there just as a depiction of a shock cloud. We don't want to see, and you can see an accrete inward. A fart is a much powerful secretion, so it's an accrete, and it's inward, so it's farting into a box, and that's why that's a shock. Okay, move on. And that cloud is green, so that makes sense. Super Eddington fallback here. This is when we're going from a much worse MBH to all-time worst MBH. Okay, I don't want to bore you with any of this stuff, but we can go Super Eddington to a sub Eddington and a very sub Eddington. Remember, Eddington is the guy who accreted things into boxes. A sub Eddington accretion is probably the one thing that you'll never want to experience in your life. I've had it as a box several times, and I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy. Okay, move on. Oh, yep. I just want to draw your attention to that for no reason at all, but there you go. And if you move on to the final slide here, well over time, and I apologize, I've never done this before. No, there you go. All right. Oh, so here we go. If you look at those arcs there and you imagine them as 3D, as three-dimensional objects, we can call them accretion disks, and those are the things that come out of a box. At different levels. You'll see there the green one, that's T10 10 days. That's a very not a very mature accretion out of a box. The 10-year ones are the most disgusting. That's why they're depicted in red. And if you put your hand in that, it's a big goopy mess. All right, so there you go. This is my fairly modest optical emission, and I hope you enjoyed it. And I do just want to tell everybody that I will be back during Christmas. So if you do celebrate Christmas, I will be seeing you there, probably holding something very pleasant for you. And we can call that a moderate accretion, positive BH. All right. Thank you very much. And I've been a box.
Box. So glad you didn't hold back. Next up, we're going to have Chris come on up. Next up, after Chris, we'll have intermission. So yeah, Chris, take us away.
Yes, tonight's about the anatomy of a streetlight pole. And I would like to point out that I made this presentation 2 years ago to win the Fisher Design Award, and I became second. So next slide, please. So you all know these streetlight poles, and they go back a long time. So in the medieval times, they were already fashionable, but the history goes way back to the ancient Greece in the 4th century. And they had these like funny sports games, and they just had the lights in their hands and they ran around with them. That's kind of the origin of the modern streetlights. There also comes the expression we can't hold a candle to. So candles are not very bright, and in ancient Greece, they had like big torches, like that size, I think. Oh, you can't see it. My camera is a bit off. So they had these torches, and they ran around with them, and they were way more impressive than the small candles. So that's why it was a thing by that time. In Paris, they it was very fashionable. The people, French people, they are really like about fashion and stuff. And by that time, they had so many street lights that at some point Paris burned down. Half of the city burned down because of all these street lights. And next slide, please. So the light itself was like very early in history finally developed. So they couldn't get any brighter. I mean, the lights you see today, they're just like a different form of what was invented like in the 17th century. And that's why the poles became more important. So people that had lots of money, they try to impress their wealth by having custom poles made. And that's why there's different poles around. For example, utility poles, power poles, and telephone poles, but also different other poles, like a plus and minus poles as well, North Pole, South Pole, but I get to that later. Next slide, please. Okay, that's a common pole, and it's very complicated, as you can see. It has many parts, so they're all labeled differently. The main thing, the main purpose of A, B, and C are to keep these bird wires. They're called bird wires because you might have seen it, birds sit on them. And it's very, very important because in urban areas where these poles are common, birds don't have lots of living room. And so they have to find a place where they can meet, mate, and I don't know, spend their time. And that's why these ABC lines, wires, are very, very important in nowadays poles. The big one, G, is actually some kind of nesting device for these birds. So they build their nest in there, and their offspring starts to live there. And that's why they're pretty used, these wires in general. Next slide, please. So this is another example of a pole. I made this illustration for a children's book. That's why it looks a bit painted. And I have to look a bit closer. Wait, it's very tiny because children are also very tiny, and then you don't need these big illustrations. And I can't read anything, so that's why I'm giving you a short overview. What's here to see, especially the bush down below is very interesting because we found out the bigger the pole, the smaller the bush looks like. So what you often might have noticed or witnessed is that next to big poles, there are big bushes or trees, even trees next to these poles, just to get the difference between them right. Next one, please. So this is a sketch I made for my PhD thesis, and it explains how a pole works. So most important part is that this lamp on the pole was developed in 723 by the Poles, and it gave them a total new purpose, not only electricity, also light, and that made people and also insects gather there, so they became more popular. Next one, please. Yeah, and to just sum it up, So the light was added, as I told you earlier, by this guy who won this poll competition, and nowadays nowadays even public buildings like the Arc de Triomphe are lit by that way, and all these cities here that are in there, the most important light nowadays is found in New York to light the Statue of Liberty. But you have to see it yourself. It's hard to describe. So thank you for giving me the attention for the last 5 minutes about polls, because polls are very important. And now that your eyes are open and you're kind of sensitized, your attention is drawn towards them, you will notice how beautiful these creatures are. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you so much, Chris. That was absolutely illuminating. All right, we have intermission right now, so you could stick around, which I recommend, because we're going to answer all those great questions you had in Twitch, or get that instant mac and cheese out from the pantry. That is an easy choice. You should stick around. All right, if I could get everyone up here on stage, we're going to answer some questions. Not me. I'm not going to answer any questions. All right, Blake, where you at? There we go. All right.
So we're starting easy, and that is, does a smaller bush make the pole look bigger?
A
Smaller.
Push.
Does.
Make.
Pole.
Look.
Bigger.
Because
it
Has.
The shape.
Reminiscent.
of
a
Smaller.
Object.
Whilst.
simultaneously.
maintaining
Perspective.
And
Girth.
Okay, Dr. Noel, since that was so easy for you, let's go with, what effects do stellar surprises have on massive box hells? So MBHs.
stellar
Boxes.
have
Immense.
Effects.
on
MBHs.
in
That.
They
always
Maintain.
the
Girth.
and
the
Perspective.
sometimes
Things.
disassemble.
and
You.
might
Feel.
Displeased.
or
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Final question. Is the dramatic presentation of grammaticalization dramaticalization?
the
Grammaticalization.
of
She frozen.
Oh.
of
Dramaticalization.
is
Always.
subject
To.
Myriad.
of
Motions.
and
Oceans.
And
potions.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. So that was me making a noise. Thank you guys so much. If I could get everyone off stage except for Amanda, you're gonna stick around. You're up next. Everyone else, get back in. The other people not on the stage, get in here. You're gonna miss the show. You gotta watch this. It's gonna be great. All right, cool. Amanda, take us away.
All right. First of all, I just want to thank everybody for coming. And I hope everybody's feeling good about where they are today. I'm very happy to be here. I've just been preparing for this all day at home, of course. And my little one, daughter, you can't see her, she's very short, but she's been staying out of my way. And just before this presentation, she came up to me and she tugged at me and she looked me in the eyes, and she said, "Mom, promise me you'll always be you and be safe." And that's why I'm here. I've made a promise and I want all of you to make a promise with me to be you and to be safe regardless. So I want to get started. Obviously, we're here to talk about, amazing. We are here to talk about getting down. And if there's one thing I know about, it's getting down. So on to the first slide. Thank you. All right, now, here's the thing. I know we've got a nice neighborhood in Edgewood. It's we've got a Starbucks. Who would have seen that a few years ago? Let me just fix this. But things aren't all as they seem. Under the beautiful sidewalks that we have tended by our nice county gardeners, lurks something a little nasty. Syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia. All these little friends of ours have creeping up. We're actually far ahead of Chicago in the United States. And it's because our teens are so hot and they're so horny. And I think as responsible Englewood residents, we need to understand that we have hot, horny teens. And we need to make sure that they can be their hot, horny selves and also be safe.
Yeah.
As a mother myself, I have a hot, horny toddler, and one day she's going to be a hot, horny toddler, and we need to prepare for that. Next slide, please. No, honey, put that down. That's Mommy Satashi's wand. Okay. Now, the thing with STIs, I mean, let's not be, old-fashioned here. There's nothing wrong with STIs. They're very cool. They're a little sexy, It shows experience. It shows danger. But there are, unfortunately, some health consequences with STIs. And that's the part that we want to avoid. Obviously, with chlamydia and gonorrhea, we can have stinging when we pee. Nobody wants stinging. We can have all sorts of, discharges and secretions and even accretions if the case is severe enough. And there's nothing that makes a hot, horny teen a little less hot and a little less horny than some goop. So that's what we want to avoid. Next slide, please. Now, what are the risk factors? I mean, obviously, when it comes to STIs, it's because there's too much passion. All right. When you're too hot and you're too horny, nobody wants to use a condom. All right. What we need is to, while embracing our teens to be their hot, horny selves, also just make them a smidge less hot. Okay. It's much easier to pull out a condom for Johnny Math Club than it is Johnny Quarterback. We all know that. We've all been there. We've all suffered the consequences. So just turning down a little bit would help that up. Next slide, please. Now, what can we do about this? How can we make our teens just a smidge less hot and a smidge less horny? Well, we're talking about a program that we can introduce to the whole Chicago area, but particularly of our community here in Englewood. So we've got some peer education. We've got hot teens talking to other hot teens. However, they need to do this in an environment where, they won't get carried away with themselves. So peer-to-peer is important. We want peer-to-peer, not peen-to-peen, okay? Or anything else like that. We've got videos. I mean, I have plenty of videos that I'm willing to put in some kind of Google Drive that the teens can access. So that's all fine. And next slide, please. Honey, no, don't. Don't cover yourself in mayonnaise, okay? She calls it a tuna sandwich. She covers herself in mayonnaise, covers herself in tuna. It's hilarious. Now, as for the program elements, we've got a lot of that figured out, and making the teens a little less hot is easy. We spike their face wash, give them some zits. It's something that all teenagers could really use. We can do things in our own homes to make them a little worse. I find the real trick to decreasing hotness is to chip away at their self-esteem, because nothing's more attractive than just having confidence. So maybe just lay in a little comment during breakfast in between the cereal and the fruit. Just oh, you smell a little funny today, something like that. Nothing we don't want to pick on their bodies so much. They have no trouble with that. And then finally, for our last slide, there's a whole theoretical basis to this that I could go into, but ultimately, we just want to focus on the hot teens. And with regard to making them a little less horny, you could, I find, talking a little bit more in the home about sexual activity, perhaps with you and a partner or a previous partner that you've had, sharing those intimate details with your teen tends to decrease their risk then of going out and getting some hot goopy STIs. And that's pretty much all that I have for now, but I want you to be you, be safe.
All right. Thank you so much, Amanda. We'll get Blake out here real quick for the final individual presentation. All right.
Yes, I wanted to quickly say thank you. Blake sadly could not be here. He asked me to stand in his place. I am Dr. James R. Quill III, Esquire, PhD, and I want to first and foremost say thank you very much to Miss King for that riveting dialogue on being us, being safe. I know it is hard to imagine, but I was once young and a very hot teen, and I could have used such a lovely dialogue like that myself. Those were some messy years. It was the 60s. So today I want to welcome you to this very exciting class. I want to welcome you to Blacksmithing 101. Now, as you all know, the PhD in my name is for, I have a PhD in metalsmithery, also known as metallurgy for the layman. Today we will be talking about heat transfer in sand casting, going right in the deep end of metallurgy. Advance, please. Now, sand casting is perhaps the most remedial method of creating things like ninja stars or samurai swords or your average back casing to a common iPhone. And it requires a case. And in that case goes a lot of sand, as the name might suggest. I think this explains itself, although there is one minor detail I would like to point out. You'll notice on the left side of the slide this word here, runner. Now, that is because sometimes there is carelessness in the workplace, and the sand is dumped in the enclosure before all of the workers have fled. That is why this little route is then left, so that before the magma and molten hot metal goes in, there is room for someone to escape should they have been left in the sand prior to the molten lava coming in. Good. Advance, please. Yes, sand casting. Now, of course, there are any number of ways you could go about crafting your samurai swords, your hunting knives, your full metal armored suits for battling your monarch's enemies. Why sand casting? Well, why not sand casting is really the question, as I like to pose it. Advantages: can produce large parts very quickly. As you saw, it is a space large enough for people to be trapped in. And it gives you the opportunity to decide what shape exactly your forms should take. You get in there, model the sand with your hands in advance before letting the rest of the molten lava flow in. Disadvantages: sand is messy and tends to get everywhere. Often after a long day of metallurgy with sand casting, you'll come home to find it in your pockets, in your teeth, in your hair, and my personal most disliked, between the cracks of your toes. So when you're trying to sleep at night, they rub together. Very unpleasant sensation. As well, it has a high labor cost, mostly due to the time lost to employees constantly removing sand from said body parts before continuing with the day's work, as sand left in undesired body parts will cause friction, abrasion, and many unpleasant rashes and bruising. Good. I think this is clear. Another big advantage of sand casting, if we could go back one slide. There. Now, I didn't mention, it also just looks particularly cool when molten hot magma is flowing out of a big pot like that. It's really my favorite part. Next slide, please. I'm coming up on the end of my time. Assumptions that many of you in this room probably have right now. I can see at least 1, 2, 3 of you who probably have this assumption, is that metal is pure and without superheat. Now, that is not true. Metal is a cantankerous substance and often want to create mischief for other metals of the type. And he's very cold, has no heart. I wouldn't call it heat at all. Last assumption I really want to touch on is mold is semi-infinite. Now, that is inaccurate. Mold is 100% infinite. Once there is a mold infestation in your home, you will not remove that mold. You can paint with all of the anti-molding paints you would like. That will not help. It will be there forever. You may as well move and let the House of Autumn take care of that. Next slide, please. We're going to blast right through this. Time to solidify. As you can see, T equals 0T. TM, of course, standing for metal. Time for metal to become metal is greater than 0 in that it takes more time than no time, which is pretty obvious. And we're just going to move right to the last one. As you can see, T equals pi over 4. The time it takes is approximately equivalent to the time it would take you or the average person to eat a pie and divide it by 4 amongst their friends. Last slide, please. Initial mold temperatures are typically, they go up as the heat goes up. It's rudimentary. Last slide, please. We're just gonna call it here risers. Now, as I mentioned to you earlier, it may be the case that the runner escapes the tunnel. In some instances, that is not true. The runner stays trapped in the tunnel and therefore must use the riser to constantly jump like Mario from the famed game. He must keep jumping over the flowing lava, which is coming in until such time as we can burrow him out or build him one of those green pipes so that he can pew, 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 come right out the top. That's all for today. That's all the time we have. I've been Dr. James R. Quill, the 3rd PhD MD. Thank you so much. And I hope that you are going to enjoy Metallurgy Blacksmithing 101. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Quill. That is worthy of a standing ovation. You know what it's time for, guys? It's time to vote. It's that time you go to vote.bbshit.com and you can start registering your vote, whether it's for a Dr. Quill or a box. Up to you. So please go ahead and vote. That's an important part of what comes next. So take it away. While we're doing that voting thing, we're going to answer some questions in a moment, but not quite yet. Got to go over a handful of things. In the Twitch chat, there is there's a link so that you can donate to Comedy Cafe Berlin, which is like the haunt that we go and do live when that's available to us. So please donate to them. Please give us more slides. That's what makes this work. All of these slides were donated by you sorts of people, which is wonderful. And we need them to keep these shows happening. So please, 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 please donate more slides. You can email them to slides@zoombullshit.com. Okay, if you missed part of the show and you really want to go back and see it, you can check out our YouTube channel. youtube.zoombullshit.com will redirect you right to it. You should like and subscribe. I just say that because people on YouTube who are cool say that, and I just kind of do my thing. But do it. If you just love us, that's fantastic. You can follow us on Facebook, Bullshit, or shoot us an email with your adoring things. So go ahead and vote. Keep those votes rolling on in. We did some already, but keep them coming. We don't want to end up, getting tired without votes. So now let's keep those votes coming in. Before we go on to the winners, I want everyone else to come out here real quick. We're going to answer one question from the Twitch chat, and then we'll get on to the winners. Summer, we got a question.
Oh, there's too many. I have to pick one. Let's do, can a hot teen solidify in time?
Hot.
Teen.
Certainly.
Must.
Solidify.
In
Time.
If
Other.
Teens.
want
Them.
to
Be.
Able.
to
Be.
hot.
And.
To.
be
Solid.
Horny.
Teens.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you guys so much. I wish we had time to answer more questions, but we got to get on to those winners. And so that's an exciting thing. We have a first place and a second place. In second place and co-presenting this evening will be Amanda.
Woo!
With our first place, Jess. So if you guys,
Yeah.
we will have you guys present the final slide. All right, whenever you're ready. 10 slides, 7 minutes, and then maybe snorting the remaining powdered cheese from that mac and cheese. Take it away.
Well, it's just lovely to be here today. My name is Timo Schmidt, and this is my colleague,
Felix.
and we are here to present a little bit today from the FU Berlin about our neurocomputation neuroimaging unit, or the NNU. Next slide, please. All right, so
Well, basically here, we're going to be talking about brains. Back to you.
well, I mean, when we think about brains, you think about small squishy things, right? So it's actually a little bit more complicated than that. So we're having this talk for the lay audience, but we know you guys aren't stupid. So we're going to pretend that you understand what us famous researchers do, and we're going to try to bridge that gap for you. So you probably remember this guy, Röntgen. He invented the X-ray in 1895. Some other kind of medium important things happened, like understanding the structure of the nervous system, describing these different cortical areas, blah, blah, blah. We don't need to get into those details. Next slide, please. The real kicker, though, is this advent of what's called CAT scanning. So, scanning, maybe, you've probably scanned a document. It's kind of like that. Actually, it's nothing like that at all. But think about that for your brain. And we're scanning your brain in slices. It's not like pizza slices, it's kind of these pictures like that. We put them all together, CAT scan. You want to take it from here, Felix?
Sure. Yeah, I was just going to point out, and being named Felix, I do know quite a lot about cats. There is a common misconception that the CAT scan was actually devised by a cat and or for cats. And that's not true. Back to you, Jess.
You're absolutely right about that. And I mean, It's no wonder that the Cormac and Hausenfield won the Nobel Prize in 1979, right? Because really, this name cat just caught on with the audience. People didn't really know what was behind it. They just thought, oh, these cute things, we can pet them. We're going to give these people a Nobel Prize. So actually, I don't think it was really about this technology. It was about the cat.
These scans were sort of the original cat video, you know.
That's right. Before YouTube, right? Next slide, please. Do you want to take this one?
Well, I sure I would take Raymond Demedian any day. That's what I will say. Now, I think we all know that, you know, there's a lot of research out there, and, you know, it's often hard to know what to believe. You know, we have a lot of different perspectives, and everybody can cite everything. But I've always found through my extensive career in academia that somebody with a nice side part is somebody that you can trust to, you know, really put the work in and have objectivity in their work. So Paul Lauterbur, on the other hand, we don't have a picture of him here, but it was just straight back. And you wouldn't know what he was hiding under that hair. Back to you, Jess.
Oh, you're absolutely right. You could never trust any of that guy's publications, especially he started writing weird stuff on test tubes, some kind of innuendo. That's just not kosher for the lab. Yeah, so, you know, we heard earlier today a talk about English. Somebody mentioned the meaning, the importance of words, and really he called, Demedian called his scanner indomitable, which, I mean, look at that. What kind of grammaticalization is that? I mean, indomitable, wow. And then, you know, of course, he performed the first whole body scan using indomitable, and it lasted 4 hours and 45 minutes. And I don't know about you, but I love being caught up in a tight space for 4 hours and 45 minutes.
I'll tell you one thing, Raymond Demedian sure knew how to find the clitic.
Oh, you're right on that one, Felix. Oh, man. So then they developed the functional MRI. Next slide, please, 1992. Most of you were probably born around then, but you know, we're scientists. We're actually really here to talk about our own publications. So enough history lesson, let's get to us.
I mean, we've got a bunch of beautiful machines here, and all of these machines have been personally tested by the two of us. We've both worked our way around all of these. Some of them, you know, little better than others. Personally, I've always been a fan of the 8932. I just think that it's very user friendly, but also, you know, it's reliable. It's like the Nissan of CAT scanners.
And you can fit a bunch of cats in there, right? Didn't you put like 6 or 7 cats in there?
Absolutely. Yeah, if you're taking the cats to soccer practice, or if you just have to hit up the pet store, you know, it's got loads of extra space. Definitely a favorite.
Can't beat that one. Yep, let's take it to the next slide. Yeah, so for those of you who maybe didn't follow those numbers, I mean, those are, for us in the field, very common, and you can find them in our publications. Each of those, the publications is just one of those pictures of our beautiful machines. This is just an overview in layman's terms for those pictures. So the first one was a scanner, right? I talked to you about the scanning machine. This is, again, scanning, but using a magnetic field and some gradient coils. And of course, we heard the presentation earlier, safety, always important.
That's true. And then the MR, which I should point out is short for meower, that sometimes goes overlooked, but the meower image formation is actually one of my favorites. This, you know, it's a lot of feline imagery. It's very cute, you know, if you're looking to kind of see what's going on up there neurologically, but also have a little bit of a cuteness fix. I would certainly recommend that one.
And maybe I can just highlight that last one, the bold signal, because we really like to be bold, right? So you can actually, if you put your cat in there, the cat's just going to light right up. It's bold, it's bright, it's exciting, doesn't harm the cat, just keeps things really entertaining.
I found it very useful when you're litter box training. You know, a few minutes in the bold signal goes a long way.
Absolutely right, Felix. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we're going to go into a bit more detail about some of our favorite machines. This one is the fMRI scanner. And we talked about this before. We've got some radio frequency going on, gradient coils, shimming coils. Coils are just curly things. Like you can put them in your hair, you can twist them around a pen. That's basically what this is. Just some metal that someone twisted around a pen and put in this machine. That's really all you need to know.
I'd have to agree. I'd have to agree completely. My favorite coils would include ramen, ready to cook, and then also, of course, the coil that's inserted into your cervix for
birth
UTI.
control.
That's right. And I think when we look at the Siemens 3T trio, we have to acknowledge that it is basically a glorified cervix right there.
It does. You're right.
Mm-hmm. And the pole that's going into it it really just resonates that everything we've really talked about today all comes down to one kind of one idea, really.
Safety
in cats.
Safety in cats.
Hot horny cats.
Next slide, please. Oh, that coil, beautiful. So I think you said it all already. This is just, for me, it's really beautiful that science has moved on this far. And you can see with this fabulous coil here, you can see, as we were mentioning earlier, about flows. You see flows, you see movement, you see additional letters. I mean, I really think this is beautiful.
I have to agree. And especially in this image, the way the coil is kind of, it's basically in the middle of being inserted into that really cute cat vulva. This is something that helps to reduce the activity in cats, their sexual activity, and it helps keep them clearer of some of the goopier infections that are out there. So I think anything that we can do to reduce that for our feline friends is really helpful.
I mean, who knew that we in the neuroimaging department at the Free University could make such a difference in the feral cat population in Berlin? It's just really been an important outreach project we've been doing.
Yeah.
Next slide, please. Felix, I know that you had the grad student who was working on this project. Would you like to tell a little bit more?
Yes. His name was Hernandez. He was a fabulous student, really good cook too. Made a wonderful banoffee pie. And it was great because when we were working together in the lab, I was going through a tough time. It was my second divorce, and Hernandez would just come in and he would sit me down, and he really looked at me. When I talked, he would listen, and I felt like he was learning from me, and not just about CAT scanners and the Siemens T3O or any of this stuff, but he was learning about life from me, and that was invaluable. He wasn't the smartest, and I failed him ultimately.
I mean, you can see that by that second coil. I mean,
come on.
It's not the best work.
Stick to the pies.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, that guy, Hernan, he was great. Okay, next slide, please. Oh, this is my topic. Do you mind if I take it?
Please.
Okay, so these are the gradient and shimming coils, and you might notice that I've taken this picture of 3 wine corks. We actually modeled these coils after some of my favorite wines. So the top one is from a very delicate white wine, and you can see that we just took the decoration from that vineyard and put it onto the coil, and to our I guess it's not so surprising, but to our great joy, this actually conducted the best electromagnetic properties for our machine. So it just goes to show there's a lot you can learn in life from wine. There you have the small, medium, and large size corks, which we turn into coils. And we have been able to make an inhomogeneity. That's a really, really great grammaticalization. I think I'm saying that right. Of one of these technical terms here, but for you working on this at home, that just means that it's not changing much, the field. So this is a great property. You can try this at home. Grab a wine cork, just start spinning it around, light a candle, throw it up in the air, and you'll basically have the same effect. Really great. It's great to try with your kids, in-home science lab. Easy. Next slide.
That's it. All right, guys. Thank you so much. That was 10 slides. Man, we are almost done with Zoom bullshit this evening. So I would just want to thank all of our performers. If you guys would come right back up here on stage and wave at everybody. That's Jess, Noah, Chris, Amanda, and Blake. You guys did such a wonderful job. It's so fun to do these things with you guys. I also want to thank our brilliant tech genius, Summer. She's the one who makes all of this stuff happen. She's the voice of God when questions are asked from Twitch. And she is just the best. And we want to thank you guys, our audience. We love improvising and love performing. It's a lot of work, but we do it because we love you. So please remember, we're here because we like you, and we need you to watch this stuff. So please give us more slides. You could do it. slides@zoombullshit.com. And then they end up in a presentation that you get to watch one of these talented performers give. So if you have questions, I have this slide in here because it makes it look like a real presentation. I don't want to answer your damn questions. And frankly, the only question I have is this really art? We don't know. So much for tuning in. We will see you next time on Zoom Bullshit. Have a wonderful night. And now that awkward moment where we sign off a Zoom Bullshit and everyone's still waving.